Hello and welcome to Into the Lumiverse. Look, this is our monthly little series here with the two gentlemen from DMW Strategic Consulting, Dennis Mosley Williams and Tom Frisbee. I feel like I'm in the middle here of a really fun experience sandwich, if you want to call it that.
Good
Um,
one.
but for all our Lumion community, we're just getting the brains trust, as I like to call these two together, to talk about some stuff each month that is super topical to what we know our community likes to hear and is constantly striving to be better on. So with that, I'm just going to get straight into it. There are a couple of things that we've picked out from all our reading that we've done this month between the three of us. In fact, actually, I can't even claim that. You know, Tom's been the power reader this month. He's found all these ones, but we're going to get stuck into the first one here, which is, you know, Tom found this great article, which is off the back of a recent JD Power investor satisfaction survey. So this is something that happens every year. I think JD Power do it, and I love the little title here, guys. The title is "Lack of comprehensive advice and personalized financial planning leaves wealth managers stuck in a codependent relationship with market returns." Boy, if that isn't a powerful sentence, I don't know that. I don't know what is, right? But if people want to get the high level stat chat, and we'll link to the survey in the notes here. But here's the high level stat chat. In that survey, full service investment advisor satisfaction was down 17 points year on year. Only 11% of advisors are doing comprehensive advice. What's comprehensive advice? They define it as, and this blows my socks off that only 11% of people are doing this. It is personalized guidance from an advisor that addresses all financial and wealth management needs, demonstrates an intimate understanding of the client's lifestyle and goals, puts the client's best interests first. Can't believe that only 11% do this. I don't know if I mentioned that already. Includes a financial plan, ensures clients understand the fees they pay, and is an integral part of the client's life. Only 11%. And 32% of clients do not feel their advisor makes recommendations that are in their best interest, and 29% say they do not feel their advisor understands their financial goals and needs. Powerful stuff. I don't know if anyone wants to kick off, but I think there's some conversation points there.
It's sobering is what that is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's sobering. What I find so fascinating about that is how wildly off the mark the advisors and the clients are in terms of who feels who's doing what. You know, what percentage of advisors feel that they are doing this versus which percentage of their clients agree with them. You look concerned. I couldn't tell if I was muted.
I was wondering the same thing. I was like, Dennis, are you gonna keep going? I mean, it makes
Yeah.
it doesn't surprise me, right? It doesn't surprise me. And that's not a knock on the advice industry. I think the survey does that enough, but there is a clear gap between what customers expect and perceive than what advisors believe they deliver. And whether that's actually what they deliver or where they believe their value is, I'm not too sure. Tom, I know that you sort of speak about this a lot, and you see this a lot in the terms of, you know, how customers feel or what they need to do to help an advisor sort of get their gist, I guess, for lack of a better term. What is it that you see?
Yeah, we call that the customer or client sacrifice, and that's defined as the gap between what somebody wants, in this case the client, and what they're settling for. Right? Nobody likes to settle, but the problem is that we're so used to settling. Like, anybody that's watching this now has probably, I don't know, if you take a moment to think about how many times you've personally settled already into your day, whether it's just started or it's over. We're used to settling, right? And the thing that drives that is that we look around for a better option. And if there isn't a better option, then we'll just say, okay, well, I guess this is as good as it gets. And I don't know if that's really good enough. Now, just to dive into the statistic you said there, and year over year it's dropped, right? So year over year it's dropped. What I had noticed pre-COVID was that there was some energy starting to develop in people around what they were wanting in their life, right? That was it kind of material? Was it that, sort of those things that show status? But I started to see a trend towards people looking more for experiences. Those things is defined by, if you say to yourself, for example, that was worth every penny, or that was a once in a life and I'm so glad I did it. That, those types of things have enduring value for people, because when they pay for them, they get something that has what I call residue on the brain. And that's a memory factor that lives on forever. You can't get that when you look at material acquisition, right? Now, there's some things in life we have to get, like homes and vehicles and ways of transporting ourselves and things for our recreational or hobby interests and so forth. But I just have a sense that there's a social consciousness developing, that there's more than that. And that's where experience comes in, right? So people can become more, they can become better, they can become more fulfilled by having those experience things coming into their life for the money they spend, instead of just goods or even services in some cases, right? And so I think COVID sped that up for a lot of people. If you were in a spot where you had to lock down, I mean, there was just a natural pause for reflection. And so coming out of that now, I think you're starting to see that manifest in the advisor environment. And at the beginning of COVID, I read a Fast Company article that said that there were going to be, by 2030, they were estimating that there was going to be $80 billion spent globally on experiences by 2030. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if that's where the social consciousness is going, and that's where advisors probably, a lot of the audience looks for that stuff in their life, does it stand to reason that we're going to start expecting that from our financial advice channel, whatever that might be? I have to think that the answer is yes. So what you see then is people recalibrating what they want. We get back to that idea of the customer sacrifice. What they want is more meaning in their planning for their life and what their money can do for them, versus just the exercise or the service of planning itself.
Yeah. Well, let's drive that point home, right? You're sitting there wondering, is there more to this? Are we seeing a social construct change where clients are expecting more because of that reflective experience they've had during the pandemic, and now expecting a reflective experience when they get to their advisor meeting? You sent this around. FA Mag in Feb 2022 released an article where, another cracking title, planners rate themselves more highly than clients do. So they were citing FPA research here, because there'll be a number of people in the audience listening to this that go, I do that already. Great, you might, but we know reality is driven by perception. And here's the perception from clients. When asked, both clients and advisors by the FPA, these qualitative topics, there was a clear, distinct gap between what advisors thought and clients thought. So here are the qualitative topics in the stat chat. So the survey participants were asked, planner is open to discussing what you value most in life. So 87% of planners said, yeah, of course I'm doing that. Only 50% of clients agreed. Planners' financial recommendations are based on clients' personal goals, needs, and priorities. 90% of planners said, of course I do that, but only 49% of clients agreed. Planner communicates importance of considering all areas of life when creating a financial plan. 81% of planners said, yep, absolutely, I do that. only 47% of clients agreed.
Mm-hmm.
And planner contacts clients on a regular basis to see what changes in life may affect their financial plan. 85% of planners said, yep, absolutely, I do that. 39% of clients agreed. There is a clear gap between the perception of reality from clients and what advisors perceive they do. What do you think drives that?
Well, I think I'll take that point one step further. And that isn't a gap in perception. That's a gap in reality. And that those statistic gaps, each one of them is a customer sacrifice. What they want and what they have to settle for in the environment they're in. And it's, I really want to make the point here, because people can hear stats like that. Oh, it's this or that, or, oh, I'm doing something wrong or bad. That isn't true. We've worked with advisors for almost 2 decades now. And we understand that they want to do the right thing for their client. They want to do well for their client. They want their client to be engaged. But what we're seeing here is that I don't want to call it the old way of doing things, but the kind of more services orientated of planning and asset management and lining up goals behind that, and that being enough, isn't what people are looking for anymore. And so it's two things. It's that collective advancement that I talked about pre-COVID. I don't want to blame COVID, but it certainly made that more, it sped up the cycle. And now we've come out the other side, and there's clear evidence that suggests that what people are now looking for out of their advice channel is different than what the traditional mode of delivery has been that's worked very well. So it's about becoming aware of where those gaps are, and you can start creating a better client experience, even if you paid attention to those 4 you gave over the rest of the year and tried to do something about each one of them. You've taken a step further towards being more memorable and more relevant to your client, and therefore reducing that customer sacrifice gap.
Yeah.
What do you think, Dee?
Well, that's what it makes me think of is this. Time with an advisor shouldn't, we're stuck on this idea of efficiency, as Tom and I have been talking about forever and a day, right? The difference between service and experience, which are used synonymously. Service is always intended to save people time. Services are actions you take on someone's behalf, whereas experience is time intended to engage you, delight you. It's emotional, meaningful. Time with an advisor should be memorable, deeply personal. But more and more, and this is like, I want to go back to Tom's point and say, do you realize how cool that point was that you made a few minutes ago, Tom, about people and status, meaning, and where they derive it from? At one time it was goods, services. Not only is it experiences and the things we do, it's who we are becoming, which leads us back to financial.
Great point.
Because there's this thing in the room that we've got to address here. There's 2 kinds of work in the financial services industry. Think how much this has changed just in our career. For me, like in you, Tom, is mid-90s stuff here. There's assigned work and there's required work. Assigned work is financial planning. There's what you do, a service, financial planning. There's how you do it, that's experience. And we know that if someone feels seen as an individual, the transaction matters more to them. We don't have to dig into this too much. But it's consequence that matters more now. And up until very recently, this idea of assigned work, now all commoditized, and required work, which is that hard, undefined, human, sticky, fraught with peril work that needs to be done. And only 25 years ago, if I was saying that, someone would have said, oh, you mean the soft skills, the soft stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, 25 years ago, maybe it's the other way around. The assigned work can be found anywhere. It competes on price at 1% until they can pay less. The required work is everything because it leads to return on life. We, the 3 of us, and everybody listening out there, we have completely different expectations for our retirement and our life that will satisfy us, a life well lived, than our parents did. The world has changed and we need more. And this is the elephant in the room. And up until now, you're an advisor, you can hear all of this, and you could tell yourself this comforting lie, but none of that is really my job. And certainly what Tom and I have been advocating for many years is no, it is your job. In fact, it is your obligation. The financial planning must be subsumed up into something else, and that the value that your client measures, the returns are expected, is in answering this question: who are these people helping me become? How am I better? How is my life better? Return on life, time well invested. Because I know Mark, anybody can get me a return. You know, I can rant, as you guys can see, but if you can make your client say this, hey, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't even know about this, and I wouldn't live this way. Like, transformation is such a terrifying, slippery, what the hell is it? Such a slippery word. It's this. You have to create within your client at least the possibility for them to revisit what they believe and how they behave. You cannot contribute to their delinquency. You need to help them make their life a better thing, a better place. You got to make them phone you and thank you. Thank you for that, for teaching me that, showing me that, encouraging me in this way. It is the ultimate return.
And and we're hoping that at some point that this I mean, we in business, we're very familiar with ROI, return on investment. We're hoping that in the planning community, that the notion of return on life gets a definition and becomes part of the vernacular. And I mean, that alone, if you even if you said, okay, I understand, I feel it, I feel, you know, a little kind of different with my clients now and what they're expecting. And all I want to do is focus on improving the return on life that their plan and their investment management can provide. You just need to figure out what it is that would give them their best life or their most meaningful life. And then make sure the plan is validating that. So our goal is still important. Absolutely.
100%.
Is financial planning still important, and being really good and qualified and competent and, you know, good at that in terms of managing the client? Absolutely. Is managing assets appropriately to, you know, deal with market volatility and making sure people stay invested instead of blowing themselves up with, you know, running to cash every time there's a scare in the market? Absolutely. Those things are absolutely important. And we never want anybody to understand or get the feeling that we're saying those things aren't important anymore. They're the table stakes. And that's where the shift has taken place, is they are the table stakes that are expected, back to Dennis's point of the two types of work. That's what's expected. What people are now looking for in the experience of things is what's next. And that's why we see Lumient as being such a brilliant solution for this, because it dives into, I mean, think of all those points that you mentioned. Understanding my values. Does Lumient address that? Absolutely. Does it let you track that? Yes. Can the client see themselves progressing towards aligning their living of their life with their finances and their long-term plans and their goals, and living that up? Absolutely. Does it force you to have a conversation that starts being more of a guiding conversation than an advice-giving conversation? Absolutely. So it actually addresses all four of those points in a way that is still efficient and effective. And that's another point to be made here too. Is there's a difference in your client relationship between effectiveness and efficiency. Efficiency is your internal stuff. How quickly you can turn workload over, how much dirt you can move every day, right? That's efficiency. Effectiveness is how that is perceived by your client. So the balancing act now becomes, how do we remain efficient, but increase our effectiveness so that all those stats that you read out for us earlier can start going the other way. right? And you need a mechanism, a platform, a way of being able to have those extended, deeper, more meaningful conversations with clients, because that's all they're asking for in order to reduce that gap.
Yeah.
Well, let me try and tie a nice little bow on this, right? And obviously there's a clear Lumiant solution here that we're really proud of. But your point around effectiveness versus efficiency, I think, is at the root of this problem, or part of this problem. And let me give you an example, right? I think when I read out those stats, there would be a number in the advisor community going, yeah, but I get the goals, right? I get goals. Yes, you may be efficient at getting goals. Let me tell you, I could guarantee you what's on 80% of financial plans out there. Retire at age 65 on X amount of dollars per year. That's a goal. Now, is that goals-based planning? Maybe. In client perception land, I would argue not, right?
Not at all.
Because that is efficient. You've got one goal. Great, let's plan to that. What's effective? Who have you helped me become?
Correct.
What am I doing when I retire? What am I retiring to? How am I creating a memory post-retirement with my family so that I live rich, not die rich? How do I unpack all of those things as an advisor? Because getting all those things out, they're my actual goals. Retirement's just a step on the journey, right? And at this point, this is typically where advisors go to all three of us and go, yeah, mate, but well, maybe not yeah, mate in the States, but yes, sir. I'm not a life coach, right? So how do I get those things? Well, how about we start with using some tools like our Your Life survey, like our values exercise, and just letting that give you the framework. Because here's the thing we have to acknowledge as advisors or the advice community. Clients do turn up with a persona, right? They have this expectation in this head of what you expect them to be saying. I need to be across the Wall Street Journal. I need to be across the New York Stock Exchange. I need to know what points are going up and down. No, no. I mean, we got that stuff. It's a commodity, as Dennis said. What I need you to be is you. But you as the advisor need to own that experience, need to own the space in that room so that you give them the opportunity to be heard, be seen, be them real selves, because that's when true planning happens. That's when true goals come out, and using our frameworks to help them sort of unpack those things and tell you what it is that's truly most important. That's where planning matters. That's where planning lives. That's where experiences and transformations live for us, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's not uncommon for the client, and I used to be an advisor, so I know this to be true. But I've seen it play out in some of the business, many of the businesses I've worked with over the years. Is that some of these lack points, the clients want the dialogue because they don't get it themselves. They need a sounding board. They need somebody to be that advice source. And there isn't anybody in someone's life better positioned to play that role as guide than a financial advisor, investment advisor. There just isn't. You look at around, who else could be influencing their life? You have a very privileged and special place. Yep. They'll open up and be vulnerable. They're willing to share because they know that what they're talking about with you is real life. And it's tied to their finances and how committed they are to making their plan come true and all the rest of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to end with 2 points here. One is another interesting sort of factoid behind all of what we've been talking about. And then the second is a little takeaway that somebody could use to start a deeper dialogue and maybe deal with one of those customer gaps, sacrifice gaps. So the first one was I read an article in 2022 about the study of the brain at death. They've been sort of studying this over the period, and there's this study had come out, and with the body organs shut down, but the brain is electrical, so it's still operating briefly after the death event. So what they found is that before and after death, the parts of the brain that are active are the memory centers. Now think about that for a minute. Yes, death is morbid, but it's a reality. And if we want relationships with our clients for life, which is One of the goals I hear of all the clients I work with, I want relationships with my clients for life. Then you need to think about this stuff. So if their memory centers are playing before and after death, to me, it's the highlight reel.
Yeah, they're reliving it all.
And truly, we would want that highlight reel not to be B-roll, but to be the best it could possibly be, right? We don't want to see ourselves in someone else's B-roll. We want to see ourselves in our own best moments. And, I think an ultimate objective for most is with as few regrets as possible. So now the takeaway. So try this. Next time you have a meeting with a client, someone you're comfortable with, you get through your review and the goals and the plan and all the rest of it. You say, okay, hey, we've been working together for a while. And we've got some goals laid out here. We've achieved some over the years, but we've got these other ones and, da-da-da-da-da. But once we get all that done, because the plan's in place to make it happen. So let's just assume they're all done. What's that going to do for you? And then just sit back and listen. You'll start to hear the real stuff come out then, because we're beyond the goals and we're starting to get into aspirations, personal meaning, values, and all that sort of thing. So it's not meant to be a conversation, but it's meant to be the beginning of an ongoing dialogue. And the true definition of dialogue is an ongoing conversation to find and establish common meaning.
Love it.
And that's a pretty cool thing that you could do with your client.
Yeah. Powerful, man.
I love that, Tom.
Mark, I'd like to say this. You mentioned a few minutes ago that idea of life coach, and something that Tom and I like, and we've been on this word for many, many years now. Life coach is kind of let's just say as a title, it doesn't necessarily warm everybody up the same way, and we'll just leave it at that. What Tom and I have been talking about forever. I could make jokes, but I'll choose not to at this time for once in my life. Tom and I really like the word advocate. Everybody listening, just close your eyes and be an advocate. Listen to how wonderful this is. Don't you want to be this? A person who publicly supports a cause or a policy. Undoubtedly, the foundational work of the financial planning relationship is financial planning. That's why they became your client. I have this need and I need it solved. But after you solve that, the value of a financial advisor, the value of the plan, like I hope that everybody hears this and sits up straighter. God, that guy just made me feel good. That's what I want you to feel. It's not the plan that is the value. The financial plan is the obstacle. Once we have it done, you and your client can actually talk about stuff that's important. The journey. It's not about the end of the rainbow. It's about every day, as Tom is saying, leading there, a life well lived. And this is my takeaway. My takeaway would be, I'm using two verbs here. If none of your clients had to think about money, they don't have to think about it. What would you tell them to worry about instead? What would that be? And this is for everything. So I'd like to be an advocate. I'd like to create something for you to buy into. I don't want to be one of these advisors that thinks I'm advising clients and guiding clients and adding value, but really they think I'm not. I'm in, Dennis. I want to do this. I'm into the Lumiverse. I'm in. What should your clients be worried about instead? And it's deeply personal to everybody listening, what you would tell Tom and I or Mark what we should be worried about. And then the takeaway question, is, okay, how are you helping your clients worry about those things today? Those things that you would list and say, your health, your sense of self, and in your community, in your family, your sense of purpose, and of course, your personal aspirations, becoming who you want. These are the things to worry about, Dennis. Are you helping your clients with it today? How come? Because that is what this is all about.
Yeah, right on.
Something where financial planning is subsumed up into a much larger offering. Time, your life well invested. That's what's so beautiful about all this.
Yeah,
I love
time
that.
well invested.
Time
Yeah,
well
and
invested.
you know, Mark, you made the point about, oh, you know, I have to become like to whatever extent. Now, some may choose to do some professional development in that area.
Sure.
They may choose that. And is it going to make them better than their competition because they've chosen to develop themselves in that area professionally because they know it's of value to their client to reduce the customer sacrifice gap? Absolutely, some will. Some won't. But the point of the matter is that if we look back on the history of the industry and the time I've been in it, when I first entered it, there weren't computers. Well, there were, but there weren't laptops.
Yeah, but they filled up a whole room.
There weren't Monte Carlos.
Yeah.
There weren't projection sheets. We had to make our own stuff up on Excel. And I mean, I can't even remember if I got it all right sometimes. But the point being, what else did we have, right? It was kind of like, you know, being a grunge rock band and having to figure it all out on your own. We didn't know, but we knew that the client needed more. So we adapted, we developed, we learned new skills, and we brought those to our clients to great satisfaction. Now we're through. FinTech is a big part of our people have had to adapt. People have had to evolve. People have had to innovate. And as we look, now that the title of that FPA article, developing and maintaining client trust and commitment in a rapidly changing environment. That's the key there. The environment is changing, and you will have to adapt and adjust if you want to reduce those customer sacrifice gaps that those statistics outline. So, you know, the notion of developing yourself professionally, I remember my father saying to me, he's dead now, but I remember him saying to me when I got into sort of the professional universe, as it were, he goes, you will always be learning. The moment you stop, you better think of something else to do.
Yeah.
And that is just the reality of things. Business is either green and growing and innovating, or it's dead and dying and staying stuck. And, sorry, that's it.
I like it. Look, I'm gonna offer my top tip for the audience, and then we'll wrap it up. I sort of wish I went first. Certainly going to be less poetic than you guys, but so here's what I take out of it, and this comes from watching Lumient users use our process, right?
Yeah.
This might feel overwhelming to people that haven't gone down this path before, which is where that, hey, I'm not a life coach, how do I get started question usually comes from. But what we typically find is that comes from this need as an advice community to be the problem solver. So here's my tip. The art to this isn't necessarily being the problem solver, but having the courage to ask one of these great questions, having the poise to hold space and let your client feel that space with what it is that this means to them, and having the humility to recognize that you may not have the solution, but the wisdom to know that you're in a far better place than if you hadn't asked the question.
Wow. And you're worried about going last? That's a mic drop right there.
Oh, it's wiping a tear away, Mark.
Yeah, maybe that's why I go last. I'm just like, okay, I got to take the best bits of everyone else, right? But I think
that's a worthy topic to pick up for our next time together. Is this idea that when you're an advisor, when you're in advice mode, you need to know to deliver a good advice properly.
Yeah.
When you shift to the experience and transformational realm, guides don't need to know all the answers, and that takes a huge pressure off. But you know, that's certainly a topic for another day. Wouldn't you agree, Dee?
Yeah, that's perfect for me. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, let's line it up. So to our community, yeah, we can keep going. To our community, we're going to do this once a month, give you a ton of content. Hey, if you want to get involved and you've got some questions or articles that you want our opinions on, stuff that challenges, send it through. We'd love to provide some opinions. We got tons of those. So please, we want to make this a really engaging thing for everyone. And to Dennis and Tom, thanks for joining me. And to our audience, thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mark. And be well, everyone.
Thanks, Mark. Take care, everybody.